11 years ago, I was erased by my own family. Not forgotten, erased. My name is Ondine Fairchild, and the last words my mother spoke to me before changing the locks on our home were, "You chose disgrace over family. Don't come back." I hadn't stolen. I hadn't lied. I hadn't harmed anyone. My only crime was refusing to cover for my sister's mistake, a mistake that could have cost someone's life. For that, they cast me out like I was disposable. For over a decade, I lived as if dead in their world. No calls, no birthdays, no seat at the table, just silence, heavy and deliberate. And then, after 11 years of nothing, a wedding invitation slid under my door. My sister's wedding, with 3 words scrawled in her perfect script, "Family is family." That's when I knew this wasn't about reconciliation, it was about optics, and this time, I wouldn't be their prop. The morning air in Bend was still heavy with mountain mist when I sat at my kitchen table, a mug of coffee cooling in my hands. Outside the window, the Cascades loomed, their peaks blurred by a veil of fog. I reached into the small pile of mail I had pulled in earlier, bills and flyers stacked together, until one envelope stopped me cold. Thick ivory stock, embossed in gold, the kind of paper you save for weddings or funerals. I slid it open with my thumb and unfolded the card. The words stared back at me. "Sloan Vivian Hale and Ethan Calder request the honor of your presence." My chest tightened, but it was the slip of paper tucked neatly inside that stole my breath. 3 words in her perfect, practiced script. "Family is family. I hope you'll come." The phrase sliced straight through me. Family. For 11 years, that word had never included me. I had been cropped out of photos, cut out of holidays, erased from conversations as if I'd never been born. No Christmas mornings, no birthday calls, just silence, deliberate and suffocating, until I almost believed their version of me didn't exist. The memory came rushing back, sharp as glass. I was 24 when everything split apart. Sloane's boyfriend had plowed his car into a pole after drinking too much, and my parents pressed me to write a statement that shifted blame, that softened the truth, so his record, and by extension, hers, would remain spotless. I refused. I wouldn't lie. That was my crime. In their eyes, choosing integrity over blood was betrayal. By nightfall, the locks were changed. My calls went unanswered. My name vanished from their lives. I left with a suitcase and the clothes on my back, carrying the sting of exile like a second skin. Now, more than a decade later, I held this wedding invitation, the paper smooth, but the weight of it jagged in my hands. My throat tightened, but my resolve settled, heavier than the fog outside. They didn't want me there out of love. They wanted me as a prop, proof of Sloane's magnanimous forgiveness. I set the card down, let my fingers linger against the gold letters, and whispered into the empty kitchen. I'll go, not so they can forgive me. I'll go so they finally see who I've become. The Deschutes River moved steady and cold beside me as I walked its bank, gravel crunching under my boots. 11 years of exile had carved themselves into my bones, and every bend of the river reminded me of the years I'd been forced to drift away from the people who should have anchored me. After leaving home, I had to start from nothing. I joined the EMT Corps, learned to keep calm when someone's life hung in the balance. I fought fires in the Cascades, ash streaking my face, adrenaline pounding while we cut fire lines in choking smoke. From there, I studied the ICS and FEMA systems, absorbing every layer of emergency response, piece by piece. I built the skills no one back home thought I was capable of. Years later, I co-founded Redline Resilience, a company that advised counties, hospitals, even utility companies on crisis management. It became my life's proof that I wasn't disposable. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with an email. Attached was a single audio file. My hands shook as I pressed play. A voice, raspy, strained, filled my ears. My father, recorded before he died. "You were right. I was wrong to stay silent. The truth will find its way, one way or another. My breath caught, vision blurring. In one instant, I felt both vindicated and gutted, pierced by an apology that had arrived too late to change anything. His silence had cost me more than I could measure, and yet hearing those words cracked open something I'd buried for years. I closed my eyes and steadied myself. This trip wasn't just about me anymore. It was about making sure my father's truth didn't die with him, about refusing to let silence keep writing the story of who I was. The dry air hit me the second I stepped out of the Santa Fe airport. Sunlight burned sharp against the adobe-red horizon, and the scent of piñon pine clung to the breeze. The drive to the resort was lined with low stucco walls and desert brush, so different from Oregon's forests, yet fitting for the kind of showpiece wedding my sister would orchestrate. At the resort, I passed staff hauling crates of wine and crates of flowers, rehearsing their steps in perfect sequence. A massive seating chart stood propped near the ballroom entrance. My eyes scanned the names until I found mine, small, tucked at the edge, with a single word in parentheses, estranged. I felt my stomach tighten. Not long after, I heard the sharp click of heels. My mother, Vivian, appeared in a pale silk suit, her face composed into a brittle mask. "Don't stir up the past, Marin," she said quietly, though her tone was iron. "Let this day belong to your sister." She walked off before I could answer. Ethan Calder, the groom, soon found me. His handshake was firm, his smile courteous, but guarded. "Sloan hopes you'll read a few words of reconciliation during the ceremony," he said. It wasn't a request. It was a warning. Later, as I stepped out into the courtyard to breathe, a man intercepted me. Tall, silver-haired, with a presence that drew the air taut around him. Richard Calder, Ethan's father. His eyes fell on the conference badge clipped to my tote. Redline resilience. His gaze lingered, calculating. In that instant, I understood. The Calder Foundation, the very organization I was auditing under contract, was his empire. And now he knew exactly who I was. Our eyes locked. No words spoken. But the recognition was undeniable. He knew, and so did I. Back in my hotel room, I sat on the bed, the ivory invitation resting on the nightstand. I whispered into the quiet. If they think I came here to be a backdrop in their performance, they're about to learn otherwise. Golden light pooled across the adobe walls of the resort ballroom, casting a glow that made everything look warmer than it felt. I stopped at the seating chart just inside the door. There it was. My name, smaller than the rest, with a word in parentheses beside it, estranged. The letters seemed to sear through me, reopening an old wound I'd fought to scar over, inside. Relatives smiled thinly, eyes darting past me like I was a stranger trespassing on their celebration. A few handshakes landed limp in my palm, quick and obligatory. My mother slid to my side, her perfume sharp, her whisper sharper. "Don't ruin this night. Let the past stay buried." I swallowed the ache and forced myself to sit through the charade. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed under the table. A message from the county auditor I'd been working with. Attached was a document that made my stomach drop. Calder Foundation had processed a massive payment to a liquor supplier for the wedding. Only the supplier wasn't real. It was a shell company under Richard Calder's assistant's name. A clear trail of embezzlement. I slipped outside for air, my pulse still racing, and found Noah waiting in the corridor. He looked older, more tired than I remembered, his eyes darting like he wasn't sure he should speak. "Marin," he murmured. "Did you know? Sloane's old boyfriend, the one from the accident. He's here. He's one of the groomsmen." The words froze me in place. My chest tightened, breath caught sharp. Tomorrow wasn't just a wedding. Tomorrow, the ghost of everything I'd lost was going to stand in the same room, dressed in a tuxedo, smiling for photographs. I leaned against the cool plaster wall, closing my eyes. The past had never been buried. It was about to walk straight into the light, The hotel room was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my hand, and pressed play on the voicemail I'd saved for months. My father's voice filled the room, worn and faltering, recorded before he died. "You were right. I was wrong to stay silent. The truth will find its way, one way or another." Tears slipped hot down my cheeks. For a flicker of a moment, I thought about leaving, packing my bag, driving away, letting them choke on their own lies. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. If I walked away now, I'd be sealing the silence back into place. A knock at the door startled me. When I opened it, Richard Calder stood there, polished and commanding, as if the entire resort belonged to him. He gestured toward the lounge, and I followed. The room was dim, leather chairs, and the faint smell of scotch heavy in the air. He poured himself a glass, sat back, and studied me like an opponent across a chessboard. "I've seen your company's name in a regional hospital report," he said casually. "I know what you do, and I know you've seen our numbers." Then he slid a folder across the table. Inside was an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, and a draft contract worth more than my firm's yearly budget. "Sign this," he said evenly, "and tomorrow you keep your peace. No speeches, no surprises. You'll walk away with a lucrative partnership." My pulse pounded, my throat dry. Once again, I was being asked to silence myself so their reputation could remain untouched. I closed the folder, pushed it back toward him, and met his eyes. 11 years ago, I refused to sign my name to a lie. Tonight, I refuse again. I stood, my legs steady, though my heart hammered. Outside, the desert night was cold, the stars like shards of glass, but inside me, something had cleared. Tomorrow, I wouldn't be their prop. Tomorrow, I would be my own voice. Sunlight flared hot against the adobe walls of the resort, painting them in blazing gold. I sat in my hotel room in a plain white shirt, staring out the window, the weight of the day pressing down on my chest. My phone buzzed. A message from Sloan lit the screen. "Marin, you'll read the reconciliation piece, right? For the family." I opened my laptop and scrolled through the audit files again. The Calder Foundation's spending looked worse with every line item. Payments looped back to shell accounts. Vendors tied directly to Richard Calder's people. If I brought this into the light, it wouldn't just crack the wedding veneer. It would fracture everything they were trying to protect. A knock at the door pulled me from the screen. Noah stood there, eyes darting, holding an envelope yellowed with age. "This was meant for you," he whispered. "Uncle Hale wrote it. Your mother hid it." My fingers trembled as I opened the flap. Inside was my father's shaky handwriting, the words uneven but desperate, and clipped to the page was a printed image from a doorbell camera. My breath stilled when I saw it. My mother, hand outstretched, pressing a set of keys into Sloane's boyfriend's palm the night of the crash. She knew he'd been drinking. She gave him the car anyway. The room spun. It wasn't just Sloane. It had been her, too. 11 years of exile, all to cover her mistake. My throat burned, rage and grief colliding inside me. My father had tried to confess, but was too weak, too late. My mother had betrayed the truth and let me carry the punishment. I pressed the letter to my chest, whispering through clenched teeth, "If they think I'll be silent again, they're wrong." The hallway smelled of roses and champagne, music drifting faintly from the ballroom where guests were gathering. I straightened my shoulders and walked toward the sound until a sharp voice cut me off. My mother stepped out from a side corridor, eyes cold as steel. "Marin," she said, "don't destroy your sister's life all over again." I slid the letter from my purse, flashing it before her eyes. Her face drained of color. She lunged for it, but I held firm. "This truth isn't yours to bury anymore," I told her. Her lips parted, but no words came. I moved on, heart hammering, only to nearly collide with a man in a tuxedo, the groomsman, the ghost of my past, Sloane's ex, the one behind the wheel that night. His face flushed as recognition hit, then softened into shame. "I'm sorry," he muttered. They forced me to stay quiet. Richard Calder had lawyers cover for me. In exchange, I signed a statement, one that cleared them. I didn't have the courage you did. I stared at him, the years collapsing into a single throb of anger and bitter validation. As he turned to walk away, movement caught my eye. Ethan Calder stood a few steps down the hall, stiff as stone. His gaze locked on me. He had heard enough. His jaw tightened, but he only gave the faintest nod before stepping back into the ballroom. I returned to my room, the letter still warm in my hand. My dress hung waiting, deep blue silk that shimmered like armor. I slipped it on, stood before the mirror, and breathed. The reflection staring back wasn't the girl they'd cast out. Today, I whispered, steady and certain, I won't be erased. Today, I will tell the truth. The adobe church glowed under the Santa Fe sun, stained glass scattering bands of color across the pews. A quartet played softly, the violins weaving through the air as guests murmured. I sat at the very back, clutching the folded sheet of reconciliation words Sloane had written for me, the paper damp with the sweat of my palms. When the MC called for the bride's sister to come forward, I rose. Every eye followed me down the aisle. My heart pounded, but my voice held steady as I took the microphone. I didn't read her words. I looked directly at the crowd. 11 years ago, I was asked to lie to protect a reputation. I refused. Today, I refuse again. Families cannot be built on concealment. Love cannot exist if we are only props in someone else's performance. The silence was immediate and absolute. Sloane's bouquet trembled in her hands. My mother dropped her gaze to the floor. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't move to stop me. I folded the reconciliation speech, placed it on the lectern, and walked away, leaving behind a wave of hushed, unsettled whispers. Golden light shimmered in the reception hall, but the laughter was thin, the clink of glasses forced. I stood alone at the bar, a glass of water untouched in my hand. Richard Calder drifted over, raising his scotch in mock cheer. The best thing a family can do, he said smoothly, is learn to forget. I met his eyes and answered softly. The best thing is learning to face the truth. Later, I asked Ethan and Sloane into a private side room. The air felt heavy as I laid a sealed craft envelope on the table between us. Inside were 3 things: my father's voicemail, his handwritten letter with the doorbell photo, and the auditor's report on the Calder Foundation's transactions. I haven't sent this to the press, I told them. Not yet. But if I'm treated as a prop again, I'll protect myself. This is your chance to confront the truth before the world does. Ethan's face hardened as he picked up the envelope, his shoulders bearing its weight before he even opened it. Sloane went pale, lips trembling. I turned and left, the sound of whispers chasing me back into the glow of the reception hall. The air in the private room felt dense, the heavy curtains muffling the noise of the reception outside. Only 4 of them were there: Ethan, Sloane, my mother, and Richard. Ethan tore open the craft envelope and laid its contents on the table. His hands shook as he unfolded the letter, pressed play on the voicemail, and studied the ledger sheets. Sloane's breath broke first. Tears spilled down her cheeks, smudging her makeup. I was terrified, she choked out. Terrified of losing everything. I let you carry it all because I knew you'd never bend the way I did. Ethan's expression hardened. The honeymoon's off, he said flatly. And the prenup's morality clause is in effect. There will be a review, immediately. His voice cut like steel. Richard's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. He simply folded his arms, silence stretching like a shadow across his face. I stood by the door, steady and clear. I don't need your apologies, I told them. I only need the truth to stop being buried. Weeks later, the local paper carried the headline, Calder Foundation under review for financial irregularities. I hadn't spoken to any reporter, but I didn't need to. The first domino had already fallen. A letter arrived from my mother, written in her careful hand. She confessed she had hidden my father's note all those years ago. "I thought I was protecting Sloan," she wrote, "but I see now I was only protecting a lie." Sloan began therapy, tentatively trying to untangle the web she had spun. Ethan busied himself with auditors and board meetings, his voice now louder than Richard's. Richard, once untouchable, lost his footing in the foundation's hierarchy. As for me, I turned down every offer Calder's allies dangled in front of my firm. I told my team at Redline Resilience, "We work in the light, we don't sell our silence." And for the first time in 11 years, I felt the ground under me was solid. Snow blanketed the Cascades in white, the mountains rising quiet and solemn beyond my porch. I sat wrapped in a wool blanket, a cup of hot tea warming my hands, watching the Deschutes River slide slow and steady beneath the pale sky. My phone buzzed against the arm of the chair. A message from Sloan lit the screen. "I'm in therapy now. I want to talk when you're ready." I set the phone down and unfolded my father's letter once more. This time, the words didn't pierce. They eased. The ache had softened into something almost tender. "The door isn't shut forever," I whispered into the cold air, "but the key is mine now. After 11 years, I am no longer erased. I am whole, honest, and free." A smile touched my lips as I closed the letter, cradled the cup, and let the snow fall steady beyond the porch rail. A chapter of my life had ended, and I was finally at peace.